Ladies and gentlemen, once again from the quasi-glorious Orange Room here in beautiful Wauwatosa, we're doing Wildwood at home. And today we have the majestic Deke Dickerson. And Deke has done many things, doggone it. Not only is he a potentate of rockabilly axemanship, roots guitar axemanship in general, but he's also an author, doggone it, a soundtrack composer, of course, a recording artist. And doggone it, he's a good buddy of my buddy Carl Wallen as well. So we got all kinds of stuff to talk about. And so joining us from his home in beautiful California, Deke, how the heck are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, sir.
It is a pleasure. It's good to finally actually meet you. You know, for years I've heard your name and especially out at NAMM shows, and they're like, you should go to the Deke Dickerson, guitar bacchanal. I believe it's called the Guitar Geek Festival or whatever the case may be. And of course, every time at NAMM over the years, it's like, you get done doing what you got to get done during the day. The only thing I'm thinking about is where am I going to eat and where's my bed?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I quit doing the festival at NAMM. It was such a pain in the butt, and man, 10 million things going on there anyway. So it was a lot of competition.
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about, you're from Missouri originally, and right. Columbia, Missouri at that. So I was wondering if you were buddies with the Bel Air guys.
Oh, absolutely. If you know them. Man, when I was super duper young, there used to be kind of a biker bar sort of on the outskirts of town called the Gladstone Brewing Company. And you could get in there if you were underage. And so, my dad would take me down there and we'd see the Bel Airs play. And then maybe a couple years after that, I started being able to sneak into the local rock club because I was already 6 feet tall. And I didn't try to go to the bar and get a drink. I just wanted to see the band play. And man, I saw the Bel Airs play a million times. And this was way, way, way back when they were a 4-piece band with Mike Henderson, who played second guitar. If you don't know who Mike Henderson is, he's a Nashville songwriter, mandolin player, slide blues guitar player. And they were amazing back in those days.
Indeed. So I was going to ask you, how did you, because I'm a big 2 years older than you. So I'm a real whippersnapper. But, when I was growing up, I didn't start getting into the roots-oriented, especially the way back stuff until actually I got into college. I mean, I was into the blues stuff, and I started to get into the country stuff by way of, guys like Albert Lee and Ray Flack and Roy Buchanan and stuff like that. And then I met, our mutual buddy, Carl, and his uncle, who's actually only a couple years older than he is. It's kind of a northern Wisconsin thing, but he also went to school there, and he played guitar. He was a guitar major. And I'd say, do some of that Merle Travis stuff. And he'd go into his guitar case and he'd open up the little compartment. He'd get out a little Sucrets container and he'd take out the mythical thumb pick and he would start doing that stuff. And it was a thing of wonder. And I thought, one of these days I'm going to learn how to do that stuff. But to me, it was always, there had to be a family member, it seemed. There was always like an uncle or a dad or a brother that was into that stuff was the entree. So I'm just curious, where did your fascination with roots music in general start from, and how was it cultivated?
Well, before I answer that question, remind me, I have to tell my good Roy Buchanan story after this.
Yes, please.
But, to answer your question, my dad was into cool music. He listened to Hank Williams and stuff like that. And, he was a good old hillbilly from Virginia that moved out to Missouri. And there was a lot of country guys out there that, those country guys, they would always play stuff like 50s rock and roll type stuff. So that kind of stuff was sort of in my consciousness. But, going to school with all the other kids, they were into Kiss and things like that, But I'll never forget, man, I must have been, 7 or 8 years old. I saw Chuck Berry on TV and he was playing the big hollow body Gibson and doing the duck walk. And I just looked and said, how do I do that? How quickly can I start doing that? That's what I need to do. I need to get one of those things and do that.
Right.
And that was all she wrote, man. It was like from that day forward, I was just into 50s rock and roll and all the various branches of roots music that sprung from that, be it country, blues, doo-wop, surf, etc.
Excellent. So what was
a life-changing moment, seeing Chuck.
I would imagine. It was kind of similar for me, but with Jimi Hendrix. When I saw him playing, through his legs and burning guitars and stuff, I thought, you know what? Not only is there great music involved, but there's fire. So that seemed appetizing. But so how did it all begin? Was your dad like, hey, let's get you a guitar? Did he actually play himself? You said he played?
No, my dad famously jokes that he can't even play the radio. But I did have other relatives, in previous generations that played music. My grandma played every instrument that you put in your hands. And, my other grandpa played guitar. And so there was music going back. But once I decided that I wanted to play guitar, I asked for a guitar for Christmas, and I had picked out this guitar at the local music store. It was a Framus 335 copy. It was $100. And I picked it out because it looked like the Gibson ES 355 that I saw Chuck Berry playing on TV.
Right.
And so I got this Framus, and the action was about that far off the fretboard. And I met this guy from Europe. He was a French guy, but he said, yes, we have a saying in Europe, you can't get famous on a Framus. Now, that's not to disparage the current Framus company, because they make some fine guitars. But
yes, indeed,
those old ones with all the 32 laminations in the neck and everything, they were pretty terrible. I still have that guitar, by the way. So I struggled along on that thing for a while, and then mowed lawns all summer long to save up and buy a brand new 3-bolt Stratocaster. And,
okay. Yeah.
Man, that thing was terrible. I mean, it was like one of the worst ones, black pick guard, black pickups, the big headstock. And when you changed from a D to an A string or A chord, you'd hear the neck pocket go,
right,
and it would go all out of tune. And so then, my dad kind of helped me out after all that. He found a guy, an old country guy out in the boonies that was selling a Gibson ES 335 and a Fender Twin amp. And so once I got that 335 and that twin reverb, then I was in business. And I had my first band when I was 14 or 15 called the Rockin' Tail Fins. And
beautiful.
Kind of been going at it ever since. And actually the twin reverb segues into the Roy Buchanan story, if you want to read it. So I had this silver-faced twin reverb amp, and I thought, this is the greatest thing ever because it's so loud.
Right.
I mean, when you're 13 years old and you're really terrible, I mean, volume is a great thing to have in your arsenal, So, like I said, I'd sort of been sneaking into shows, and eventually I began playing shows in the clubs around town. They were all kind of cool with me because I didn't drink and I was 6 feet tall, didn't look like an underage kid. And Roy Buchanan was coming to town, and the club owner said, Roy Buchanan is asking for a Silverface Master Volume twin reverb in his rider, and you have one of those things. Could we borrow it for the show? And I was like, yeah, that'd be fantastic to have Roy Buchanan playing through my amp. Wow. And so, this is like a real showbiz lesson for a 14-year-old kid. There was a opening band and they played forever. And finally the word got out that Roy Buchanan was late, and he was really late. He was like 3 hours late. He didn't show up until, 12:30 or something like that, way past my bedtime. And so I'm waiting there for Roy Buchanan. And he shows up, he walks in the door, he's got the Telecaster. Oh my God, it's Roy Buchanan, it's really him. And his band take the stage, and they've got their backline provided for them. And I see Roy Buchanan plug into my twin reverb and then just dime out every single knob. And then he starts playing Little Wing. That's the first song he played. And it's louder than anything has ever been in the world, ever. Right? In this little club, there's maybe 150 people in there. It's so loud. And about 4.5 minutes into Little Wing, Roy Buchanan blew up my twin reverb. And of course, then it's like, oh, well, what do we do? And then there's like another 45-minute wait while somebody goes and gets some other amp from somebody's house. And then he plays 3 songs. That's the end of the show. I never even got to meet the guy. He was just out the door as soon as he was done with his set.
Bless him.
And then it was like, oh, well, I have this twin reverb that Roy Buchanan blew up. The club owner paid for some new speakers, God bless him, and the speakers.
Oh, so he blew the speakers.
He did, yeah. And the speakers that Roy Buchanan blew up are still hanging in my dad's barn back in Missouri. They're way up there in the rafters.
Buchananized.
Yeah.